It is my pleasure to introduce Brad Barton. If you haven't looked at all the stuff I sent out on Brad, read it. But I'm not going to give you a big monologue of that. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about Brad personally from me. I met Brad over 25 years ago. He was working a day job. Oh wait, all want to do that again. He was working at Weber County Health Department, not Health Department, Weber County Mental Health, and he was actually at a PTA meeting. He was speaking to people, and he was trying to help and inspire people, and he inspired me, and we became friends. We shared magic tricks. I have to tell a story about how I got invited to the NSA. You guys hear me speak about the NSA a lot. And Brad, I happen to have a client who was the administrator who got laid off from Acadia Hospital, and he wanted to write stuff for Leno. And I go like, I just know one guy who you should probably talk to. So Brad and I went to lunch, and Brad invited him to the NSA, and he said, "Well, why don't you come along too?" And so I was at the NSA going a lot of time just hearing these professional speakers. Brad,
NSA, National Speakers Association. I don't know if
yeah,
you
yeah,
should use
yeah.
that.
Not the other NSA that people are always worried about when they hear me say that, and then I pause for a minute and wait. But also, Brad is a magician, and I'm so blessed that he came and he's here to speak to you guys today. So, Brad, it's all you.
Okay, let's start with a story. There's a little girl on her grandfather's lap as he read her a good night story. From time to time, she takes her eyes off the colorful storybook and reaches up and lovingly touches Grandpa's wrinkled face. By and by, she's touching her own smooth face and then Grandpa's wrinkled face. Finally, she stops and asks, Grandpa, did God make you? And Grandpa said, Oh, yes, honey, God made me a long, long time ago. Oh, she said. And and then she asked, Grandpa, did God make me too? Oh, yes, sweetheart, God made you just a little while ago. Oh, she said. And then she touched their respective faces one more time and asked, Grandpa, God's getting better at it now, isn't he? Folks, I believe, I believe there's some wisdom in the story for us as we begin these few minutes we have together. I believe, and this is my theme this morning, all of us ought to be doing that. We ought to be getting better. Folks, let's get better. I'm going to talk about lots of different things, but the theme again that I'd like to speak with you about, and I say that on purpose, speak with you, not just speak at you about, is about getting better. If you want more, then you get better. That's how we do this. I will say that this is an incredible time in human history. And I'm preaching to the choir. I understand. You guys know change. You do. Change is coming faster than it ever has. And we are on the brink. And I don't know for sure how much of this we're going to get back to. We're on the convergence of several incredible, um, not just revolutions, but full phase changes in 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 technologies. There's three major technologies that are that are uh, going to transform in the midst of transforming the way humans operate. And so we've got to change. We've got to lean in. We've got to get better. 5 years ago, things looked a lot different than it does right now. How many of you are with me? 5 years from now, things are going to be even more different. And so, if we get really good at operating in the way things used to be, we're going to be obsolete. And so we've got to be willing. We got to be willing to lean in and get better. Okay, comments on that. What does that mean to you? Tony, you're nodding your head. What does it mean to you when I uh, uh, make a call, a plea, a challenge for us to get better?
Well, if you don't, you're gonna slip backwards, right? Um, I mean, as you can look around, Brad, a lot of us on this call, we're first-time losers of jobs. So what worked for us 10, 15, 20, some of us more, um, doesn't work now. And so adaptability is something that, especially my time in the layoff world, adaptability is key. And part of that adaptability is adjusting and learning new things, because this whole unemployment thing is applying for jobs is a new world for me.
Yeah. And it's especially doing that while you're just feeling like you've been kicked in the gut, some of you, right? Some of you saw it coming and it doesn't hurt any less. Some of you didn't see it coming, and the hurt stings pretty bad that way as well. Um, so yeah, thank you. Other ideas for what it means to get better.
This is Roger. Accept change.
Hmm.
Change
Yeah,
is always occurring, and it just happens to occur in each and one of us right now.
right. Yeah, there's for both those ideas, there's a story that I like about a little boy that was in during the sermon. He was getting agitated. And after the sermon, he ran up to the pastor. He says, "You got to come over to my house right away." And he said, "What's the matter?" He says, "Well, you said in your sermon that our bodies came from dust." And he says, "Yeah, that's what I said." He says, "Well, you said also that when we die, our body is going to go back to dust. You got to come to my house right away, Pastor, because underneath my bed, someone's either coming or someone's going." Guys, that is us, right? We are not, this is not a static environment that we live in. This is the human condition, because this thing called entropy, the second law of thermodynamics says that in a system, um, things don't stay the same. It's not static. That the universe tends to disorder, right? That systems that are ordered become disordered over time. And because we live in this world, this universe that's ruled literally by entropy, if we arrive at a place, we're not going to stay there. We don't. Some of you remember back in the day taking a, a semester off between your quant series, right? And your math skills didn't stay the same, did they? Over those few months period, your math skills went backwards. And that is just a type. This is how it is. If we're not continually getting on purpose, getting better, then by definition, the fact that we live in a universe with entropy, then by definition, we are going backwards, right? We're either coming and getting better, or we're getting worse. There is no stay the same. Comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in technology and I've kind of seen that throughout my entire career, right? I mean, you look back to like Windows 95 and you get good at that and of course, they improved that. Windows XP, and you improve that and they go to Windows 7, we're at Windows 11 now. And it's like, everything's changing. They you figure out what went right and they improve on that. And they take a leap of faith in technology, and the things that went wrong, they discard, right? And find new ways to do things. So if you're not learning the new technology, if you're not leaning in, like you say, to the new stuff and growing with it, well, then you're going to be left behind with the obsolete for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Great example. Other comments before we move on?
I can chime in here. I'm finishing a 24-year career in the Air Force, and I just did a skill bridge with Allegiant Vet, so it's been remote and at home. So I haven't been working, at work for like the last 6 months, and I can definitely feel that, like all those skills and stuff, you just start feeling them starting to kind of erode. You know what I mean? So I actually had an interview Friday. So I was going back and I was going back through my PMP books and stuff, just kind of trying to refresh some of the stuff that, I felt like we might be talking about in that interview. So, and I was kind of like, man, I need to do this more often because I got to stay on top of this stuff. Like as I started going through it, I was like, oh, yeah, I know that. But you know what I mean? Just sitting here being static, I can definitely see how things just start to kind of erode. You know what I mean? So we got to try to stay on top of those skills and keep honing them. So that definitely resonates with me.
Yeah. So this idea of static, if we're not coming, we're going. And let's remember this idea of entropy. It doesn't get talked about as much as it probably as relevant as it is. Our sock drawer gets disorganized, our thinking gets disorganized. The entropy from exploding stars to a worn out knee, right? From an exploding career to a worn out dream, right? Entropy rules the day and the night and everywhere in between.
Uh, I'll add one thing because I don't think this aspect gets talked about enough. We always talk about change and we think about in terms of technology and the way we're working. I think we also need to pay attention to the change in who we're working with. And I think I'm the only person that's on here today that's in marketing, but not just the technology changes, but the way people are, the way people think, the way people live changes. And I need to understand that. I need to understand the generations coming up, or I can't market to them. Some of these people are going to be, everybody on this call, like Tony pointed out, we're all of a certain age. At this point, we're going to have leaders that are younger than us. And we need to understand how they think and where they're coming from in their generation. And I see a lot of pushing back against this and pushing back against the way that people feel like younger generations are and this and that. And it doesn't matter because it's the same way you can push back against the technology or you can embrace it and learn it. It's the same thing because those things aren't going to change either. And I think, again, that's part of our reality and part of doing business, no matter what part of business you're in, that dealing with people and that's part of your daily life, whether it's in the office, whether it's your customers, if you're in technology and you're building, if you're in, customer experience, whatever. So I think that's another aspect that we need to be adaptable and change in that aspect too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Dax, for that great comment. And also Kobe, I don't think I thanked you for chiming in as well. There is a word or a term that the computer industry has adopted and adapted. The word is defaults. And so here's a question. Computer defaults, are they good or are they bad? What do you think? Chime in. Are computer defaults good or bad?
They're both. It's nice to have a baseline that, and software wise, the manufacturer kind of recommends these things, but there are things depending on your environment that you can adapt and actually improve.
Okay. Other thoughts? Good or bad? Defaults.
I think the defaults are good to start with. I think that's kind of where he's saying, right? And then, but that's kind of your baseline where you start, but you shouldn't stay there. Most of the time you have to customize it for your environment.
Okay. Have you ever had a default that was inexplicably set incorrectly? You turn on your computer one day and it something's broken, and 20 minutes of Google searching later, and you finally give up and call in one of your teenagers, and they, about 7 clicks later, they get it right again for you. Yeah, that's pretty frustrating if the defaults are set incorrectly. It's better if they're set customized, right? But imagine these things if we had to reconfigure them every time we pick them up. Okay, they wouldn't even be useful, would they? So are computer defaults good or bad? I would submit they're neither or both. Okay, I would say that they're just really, really powerful. How about that? Computer defaults are powerful. Powerful for negative, powerful for positive, right? Steve?
Talk about technology. I want to go back and just what's up here. I think I've got some defaults that I had to reprogram from my childhood, things I was told that I believed wholeheartedly and realized that they've affected my life. And, I've got some talk about defaults. I've got some reprogramming going on upstairs that daily something, triggers something from my default section. that I wished it didn't.
Okay, very good. Do you know the human brain is the fastest working, coolest running, most compact and efficient computer mechanism ever produced in large quantities by unskilled labor? Did you know that? We've got this a marvelous piece of machinery up here, the likes of which there is no equal. I mean, AI, this is incredible. What's more complex, the human brain or the galaxy, right? I mean, there's debate. This is an amazing piece of hardware. What about, to Steve's point, the software that's written over the top of this? Folks, all of us have defaults. We have defaults for the way that we think when things go great. We have defaults for the way that we cognate when things go poorly, right? We have defaults for our conflict cycles with our significant others. One that's fairly common is I'd rather be right than happy. How many of you can relate to that at one point in your life? Right? Think about the way driving, the last drive you took. Did you even think about it? Okay, if you drove 100 miles, you maybe made 1,000 life and death decisions. You likely never thought about the act of driving, making all these decisions. Why? Because driving is a complicated set of defaults, isn't it? It's just defaulted. Folks, our lives are defaulted, really. And the idea of making, these high level choices, yeah, that happens as well. But most of our lives is the defaults. Here's the rub. Again, to Steve's point, most of the powerful defaults, the ones that really rule the sub programs of our lives, were set in our extreme youth. And some of those defaults, the way we feel about ourselves, the way we trust or not, the amount of hope that we have in discouragement, many of those defaults aren't working for us anymore. Okay, some of them never did. And so I think that part of getting better, right, theme of the morning, part of getting better is to do a search and destroy mission on our defaults, to look at our defaults and test them, and then find a way to reset those defaults. I'm going to tell you a story that will kind of I think it might be some great talking points or some things to learn, things to be reminded of that we already knew along the way as I tell this story. But this notion of defaults, I'm going to come back to that as well. What if the quality of your life, what if the quality of our lives is how well we manage these mental constructs, these habits of attention and habits of thinking, these mental defaults? And if we want to make more money, if we want to get a better job, if we want to start a business successfully, if we want to have more joy in our significant relationships as a dad, right, or as a parent, as a sibling, right, as a friend, if we want to get more quality of life, then what if a key to that is to manage our defaults differently than just letting them be? That's the growth mindset, folks. That's the growth mindset. It's about using the power of our imagination to learn and to grow and to adapt and to become. Comments on that before we move on?
I think just from everybody here, it's whatever's triggered when you thought the interview went well and you get that thank you but no thank you. I'm pretty sure that triggers something from people's past. Liz, I'm talking about you. I know you had a rough one this morning. Got that message. So
yeah, that's a kick right there. Anais Nin says that we do not um, experience life as it is. We experience life as we are, right? And she uses other terms to describe this, but I like the term defaults. This set of defaults that we have, the way we see the world, um, we can thrive, or we can survive, or not, according to the way we set our defaults. All right. Let me just tell you this story that, and please jump in. And as I tell this story, I'm going to invite you to see your own story in this, as I think that most of you are going to find at least some relatability to some of the details are different, but this is our story that I'm going to be telling. Start by telling you that I was born at a very early age. And I was raised on a cattle ranch near Salmon, Idaho, 1,100-acre cattle ranch in the middle of 9 children. I believe that my mom and dad had 9 kids for cheap child labor. They worked us pretty hard. I got to elementary school, and my dad was pretty rough, and so I had some defaults about what I was capable of. My dad called me lazy and worthless. Those are the two belief systems I had about myself. I was the shortest kid in the school, have learning disabilities called Lix-Dexy. Have you ever heard of this? Where you get things kind of backwards in your mind. I get to middle school, and the teasing gets worse. Step off the bus the first day in high school, brand new backpack on, new jeans. I'm in high school now, in my glory, 4'9". I weighed 82 pounds in high school, and I got nothing. I'm getting beat up at home, getting beat up at school. I'm a school failure. I do not like myself. I was in trouble. And that's when I decided to become an athlete. All 4 foot nothing and 82 pounds. I went up for the obvious sport, which was, no, not football. It was the wrestling team. My wrestling coach, I'm 4 weight classes below the lowest weight class, right? 98 pounds. My best friend, Kip French, was the returning state champ at 98 pounds. There's no way I'm going to beat this kid. I got the job by default at 105 pounds. I won 2 matches that year by forfeit, right? That's it. My coach, George Artemis, pulled me aside from the other wrestlers one day, and he stuck his finger in my face, just like my dad used to. And he said, I will make into a champion. And guys, that was a crazy thought for me. A champion, really? And he began to teach me. I didn't understand about mentorship. I didn't know about that. I learned about that later, but that was my first mentor, someone that saw in me something I couldn't see in myself. And he told me at the end of that wrestling season that I could go to college. I went home and told my dad, and he laughed at me. That was my first mentor, and as I went through this program, he was teaching me things about life and about. He didn't use the term defaults, but he did talk about the power of stories, right? Which is kind of the same thing. How are mental defaults set? How are these beliefs programming our mind set, right? That's what a default is. It's a mindset. How does it work? It's the stories that we see. What is the anatomy? Here's a crazy story, question for you. What is the anatomy of culture? Okay, I think we all agree that culture is not a little deal. It's a big deal in our homes, in our congregations, the culture in our work team, the culture in the larger team. Right? The culture is a big part of how successful organizations are. And what is the anatomy of culture? Think about that. If you were to take culture, which is kind of a living, breathing thing, isn't it? And you broke it all down and ordered up the pieces, what is culture made of? Let's have a quick discussion on that. What's the anatomy? And Steve, I appreciate you jumping back and forth because I love seeing the faces. What do you think, Fred?
I can jump in here.
Okay, please, Kobe, thanks.
in my time in the Air Force, we've gone through a lot of changes. I think one of the things I appreciated most was the culture, right? It is a very team-centric culture, especially in my particular career field. I always played sports. I always played team sports, baseball, football. So that was always kind of familiar. One of the interesting, and I don't know if y'all would remember this, but back in the day, there was a thing called "Don't Ask, Don't Tell," and that got repealed, and that changed a lot. And I'm from Texas, so you're talking about, beliefs and things of that nature, you know what I mean? A lot of stigmas. So I've had to kind of reprogram some of those things. And later on, as I gain rank and stuff, and then don't ask, don't, uh, yeah, don't ask, don't tell got repealed and everything. Then we started having some transgender folks that started entering the military, which was super new. I actually was a supervisor of one, and I'm telling you that this was the hardest working individual. They were awesome, and she was actually transitioning from female to male. Um, and the crazy thing is that she worked so hard. She was doing the male PT test and meeting those standards long before she ever had to. Um, and then, but the crazy thing is the Air Force was evolving so fast that we weren't really ready for that. She deployed one time and then had to be sent back just because of the medications and stuff that she was using. So it was kind of crazy. So, but at the same time, I got a lot of growth out of working with her and getting to know her, and just being able to change some of those preconceived notions or stereotypes, you could say. So anyway, that's just kind of my tidbit. So
I hope we have the time, Kobe, to circle back to a comment you made, this notion of that things were changing so fast that we kind of weren't ready for them. And so it created some difficulties right there. That super poignant example to what we're talking about, right?
yeah, diversity is one of the biggest things that I think that's what makes us the strongest. The Americas, we've heard it all our life, we're this huge mixing pot, and we are, and we still are to this day. We have all these cultures that are coming in and integrating into our culture, which is actually making our culture as an America constantly evolving as well. So we're always picking up these little tidbits, you know what I mean? I'm an American, but my favorite foods are Mexican and Italian. So, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, I mean, I guess one of the anatomies, I guess you would say, of culture is just constant evolution, constant change, and then always having that open mindset to be able to accept those things, the good and the bad, right? And then working together to find common ground and then, coexist. So,
yeah, there is a word that has been used to describe diversity training, and it's called tolerance. And I, from the very beginning, back in the 90s, when they talked about this notion of tolerance training, I just viscerally have a reaction against that. Seriously, we're going to tolerate? We're going to come to a seminar and learn how to tolerate each other? We're going to tolerate? Really? Think about the most powerful country in the history of mankind. Easily, it's the United States of America. There's never been a country with a stronger military, with a stronger sense of urgency, manifest destiny. This is decades, centuries long. We are, right? And it's one of the most diverse nations in human history as well. I know as a beekeeper, that's one of the things I do as one of my passions. Two beehives is a hobby. 6 is the little nuts. I've got 150 of them. When a queen bee, a virgin queen, goes out for her maiden flights, and she only mates for a 1 or 2 day period throughout her life. And those at the very beginning of her life, she goes out and mates with some drones. The more different drones that she mates with means that for the next 2 to 5 years, her lifetime, she's going to have more diverse or less diverse daughters. And the research is really clear that the more she gets, the more diverse that colony is, the better those bees get along and the more productive they are and the gentler they are. So if she goes and mates with 6 or 7 drones, that's a problem in that system. If she mates with 30, then things work a lot better because they're not as well related with each other. And in the animal world, in the insect world, diversity is the key to success. And I think that's kind of a cool analogy for where we're at. Why are we the most creative culture in the world? I think it might be because of this the cross-pollination, right? That takes place. All these divergent ideas, some of the different cultures converging into our one culture. Other comments about culture and the anatomy of culture. Kobe's given us some great ideas.
I was thinking when you asked the question about culture, a couple of quick things that popped in my mind was it's our society, which we're diving into a little bit more. You can break that up. History plays into our culture, and the people and laws. Those are the type of things that it's what we culture changes, but you can also make culture where it doesn't change.
Okay, so thank you very much, Scott. Let me give you a definition of culture, and let's see if it doesn't encapsulate both comments, Scott and Kobe. What if culture is the combined total of all of the stories that are told and retold? Think about that. So what if we can cultures aren't set and stable and static, are they? Cultures change over time. They get better and they get worse over time. And it doesn't always follow bricks on ground, bricks and mortar, boots on ground circumstances either. If you've been in an organization that is in hard times, but the culture is high because there's hope, right? Or things are going great, but things just the culture is not great, right? It's about because there's not as much hope, right? What is hope? What is this thing called culture? I believe it has a lot to do with the sum total of the recently told stories. And when we learn to tell more better stories, and the more better stories are being told, the culture is improving. And if the sum total of all the recently told stories are negative, then the culture is diving. And that's the way that I believe that's what culture is. Anyone here ever read the book? I just got Tribe of Mentors stuck in my head. There's a book I'm just reading right now. Tribal Leadership. Has anyone ever read this book or heard of this book? Okay, I'd commend that one to you. Tribal leadership. There's a story in this book that talks about one of the worst hospitals in the United States, Griffin Hospital. And there's a lot to the story, but basically they brought in a new CEO or brought up a new CEO, actually someone from the depths of the organization. And here's what this new leadership team did. They brought everybody in and they said, let's make a list of the world-class hospital. And they went through it and had an exhaustive list of what a world-class hospital would be like. And then let's make a list of what Griffin Hospital is about, all the various aspects of what Griffin is. And they were nearly bankrupt. they were terrible on all their stats. No one wanted to go to Griffin Hospital, right? And then when they got done with these two lists, and it took 12 different meetings to do this because they had to keep the hospital running. At the end of each of these meetings, the leaders took a look at these two lists and asked their people, which of these two hospitals do you want to work for? And what do you think the answer was from the people that worked at this terrible failing hospital? The world-class hospital or Griffin? Yeah, you would think it would be the world-class hospital, but that's actually not all of them chose that. Almost a third of them said, well, we'd rather work at Griffin. And why is that? Think about that. Why would people want to work at the hospital that they're working in with a terrible culture? Because it's easy. They were in their comfort zone and they got up and they went to work and they went back home and that was it. They didn't want to have to work that hard because the world-class hospital just sounded a little exhausting, right? But most of them, the critical mass of people, and from the people pushing the brooms to the neurosurgeons, all of them participated in this. And the bulk of these people decided we want to work at a world-class hospital. And so this is what we're going to have to do. And they started changing the story. And that's what they did. That's all they had at first. It's just a different story set. And within a few years, they finally had to say, time out. We're going to start charging other hospital administrators to come to Griffin because it's just too distracting to have people come in here and not get paid for it. So they started charging admission to do deep dives into their culture because they had switched things so dramatically. And Griffin Hospital went from one of the worst in the nation to one of the best. And they didn't have any money to do anything different. All they had was the power of their imaginations and story time. And when they took those stories and spread them throughout the culture, everything shifted. And now they do have money to build a new hospital, and they're amazing. Let me give you an example of how powerful stories are, because this is what my high school wrestling coach says, Brad. Stories are not a little deal, they're a big deal. Stories are not a little bit powerful, they're a lot of it powerful. And so if you'll just hang with me for a second, I want to try just a quick object lesson. Watch right here, and let me see if I can keep this in your screen. I want to invite you to watch right here. The trick goes fast. If you blink, you might miss it. So ladies, gentlemen, I have in my hand a card on, oh, by the way, this is story time. I have in my hand a card. On one side of the card, there is one dot. The other side, 4 dots. Once again in review. 3 on this side, 6 on that side. How many of you confused? Raise your hand. Steve, show me the hands right here. I want to see if you switch the... Okay, let's try it. Put your hands up. Now I can see you. Okay. Now, think about what you just saw. On the first side, did you see 1 black dot? And then 4? And then 3? And then 6? So out loud, please count with me. 1, 4, 3, 6. Out loud, please. 1, 4, 3, 6. 1, 4, 3, 6. Think about that. 1, 4, 3, 6. Right here. 1, 4, 3, 6. And back to 1 dot all over again. How many of you are still confused? Raise up your hands. And by the way, the trick should only work 1 time. Now, some of you didn't get caught because really the trick should work once. But about half of you got sucked in again. Why? Let's think about this for a minute. I say the number 1, a 1-word story. 1. And then I show you some evidence to suggest that it's true. Yeah, there's 1 black dot right there. Then I said the number 4, and I flipped this thing over, and yeah, there's 4 dots. Now here's the brain explode part. Ready? Ready for this? Then I said the number 3. Okay, I say, okay, so once again, 1, 4. Now watch this. 3, 6. And that's what we saw. That's what actually happened. So here's the question then, folks. Was there ever one dot on any of these sides? No. Now I can forgive you this one, right? Even though you're not seeing the whole card. Okay, one black dot. But when I said 3, cast your mind back a moment. When I said 3 and I showed you that, you create a dot that's just as round, just as black as and real as the other two in that split second of mental conditioning. We just created a mini default, didn't we? And because you had that default in your mind, your brain filled in the rest. Because this right here, a little parlor trick, this is what makes that interview go great or not, because of our defaults. This is what makes that first week back in this new job you're about to get or not, because of the many defaults that we bring ourselves. This is what created probably the last, a conflict cycle with your significant other, and positively set defaults help you work through those to get back to connection, because we've got great defaults where we're creating beautiful dots, and some of us have got other kind of defaults that just keep us stuck in our relationships with, our spiritual relationships even. Ladies, gentlemen, think about this. 1, 4, okay, 3, and then 6. Are defaults little or are they big part of our lives? Comments on that?
This is where you all unmute and talk.
What did you feel when we went through that activity?
Kent.
Brad, it was good. It was good exercise, good practice. What brought to mind is we all have defaults, right? And one thing that I thank you for sharing it with us, because half the time I don't even think about the defaults, right? You think about the immediate, what you're experiencing, what you're going through. Why is it that you're not getting the hits that you want to receive, right? You're sending out resumes every day, every morning. You're sitting over here behind the screen. And thanks for Tony. When I met with Tony was very helpful in saying, okay, listen, address it this way. Take a couple of hours, first time in the morning, looking for all these jobs, right? And then take a break, go do what you need to do, circle back again in the afternoon, and then come in at a different way. Now, that is something that I never thought of, right? Again, I'm living in the immediate. Now, what you said, Brad, it makes me think to go back into my youth, right? What have I done since youth was work for me and what hasn't, right? So you can identify little bits here and there of things that may have transpired in your life that might not have been helpful, that you might probably be able to change, which might be instrumental in the way we approach looking at new jobs, right? Also to piggyback, circling back to what you mentioned before about culture, right? Dictionary states that definition of culture is culture is a collection of shared beliefs, values, behaviors, and customs of a group. It is vital. It is so important to have a culture, right? To have people of diverse cultures, because for one, it makes you better. It makes you better, and you can only get better and more and more by being a collective. Lesson, for example, I refer to Star Trek, right? I'm a Star Trek lover, right? Where you remember seeing the Borgs, right? Then when you met with them, first thing they identify themselves as a collective, right? Because they assimilate, and and the more you assimilate, you bring it in more cultures, it makes you more powerful, right?
Yeah.
So you operate as a collective, as one. So it's so important to have that idea and operate as such, right? If you fall to having a narrow mindset or wanting to deviate from that, then you no longer perform as such. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you for bringing that up.
And thanks for casting back to what we were talking about in terms of that when you said that, I think of this term tolerance. What an awful way to describe getting along with each other. We're going to tolerate each other, Fred, really? Right? And this notion of collective, that we're part of a bigger whole. It's just lovely. I
Right.
love that. Let's go
Right.
back to the first part of your comment, though. This idea of not really thinking about what we're thinking about. Psychologists call this metacognition, right? Most of us spend most of our time just thinking. Okay, but yet we have the ability, maybe singularly, the organism on the planet that has the ability to metacognate. Okay, so we can think about what we're thinking about. So once again, we spend almost all of our time, and some people really never think about what they're thinking about, right? This notion of self-awareness is metacognition, right? There's a book called The Screw Tape Letters by a famed author, C.S. Lewis. He's commonly known for the book series, The Chronicles of Narnia. Some of you have seen the movies and read the books or whatever. He wrote a book. Probably my favorite book, C.S. Lewis book, is called The Screw Tape Letters. And there's a scene from this that I thought of, and I was trying to find the exact quote as you were making your comment, Fred, and I can't find it, but let me just kind of paraphrase. The premise of the book is an experienced tempter mentoring a less experienced imp or demon in how to win the souls of the people that they're trying to capture into the infernal regions, as the book says, right? So that's the premise. So how do you damn a soul to hell, basically, right? And it's interesting. One of the scenes, Wormwood, the uncle tempter, is talking with his nephew, saying, you gotta take your patient, I think is what they call it, get their eyes off of looking at the whole, and get them focused just on the immediate sensory experience, right? Get them focused on the immediate sensory experience. Teach them to call that real life. And when you do that, if you just get them sucked in your words, Fred, to not thinking much about my defaults, right? Then you've got him. You can win his soul, right? So folks, let's step back from this immediate sense experience. This is what's happening to me. Oh yeah? Well, what about if I step back and I say, okay, what about the stories? How am I consuming this hard thing that just happened to me? What are the stories that I have that are working? Think about the drive home after the pink slip. What went through your mind? What were the stories going through your mind? Some of them were positive, I would think. Like, right? I never really liked that job in the first place. This next job is going to be so much better. Okay, that's a story. And then the other stories come in. And that's when we can grab the better stories and have more sum total of more positive stories going through our mind in a day, our culture inside our own heads is getting better. I got to Weber State University on a scholarship, just like my coach said that I could. And my coach at Weber State, after a couple of years working with me, he pulled me into his office. I wasn't very good, by the way. There were 8 athletes, that 8 freshmen that came in that year that coach got. And the 2 that had the best scholarships were the fastest kid, Bob Durchie, one of the best. I think he set the state record in the mile. And the slowest of the 8 was a kid from a place called Salmon, Idaho. He literally got me off a horse on the cattle ranch. Us two, the fastest and the least fastest, got the best scholarships that year. because my coach had vision. He could say, this kid, I could see a diamond in the rough. Well, after 2 years working with me, he pulled me into his office and he says, Brad, I think you could be the first person in Weber State history to make the U.S. Olympic team. At that point, it had never happened. And for 90 minutes, he shared these elaborate stories talking about my considerable weaknesses as a runner. And then he buttressed that with talking about all my strengths that he saw in me and how we're going to take those strengths and countermeasure my weaknesses. He says, there's no guarantee of success, but if you give me your heart, I will put you in a position to make that Barcelona Games team. As I walked out of his door that day, he says, Brad, I remember this, he got my attention. I turned and he says, let's go do something that's never been done. And I got chills. I was in all the way. And for the next several years, we've singularly focused on that notion. We're going to Barcelona, baby. And we're going to do something that's never been done. Okay, let's fast forward a few years. The year is 1992. Louisiana, it was New Orleans, Louisiana, the site of the U.S. Olympic trials. I am now ranked 19th in the world in my event, the 3,000-meter steeplechase. I'm one of the top Americans. 3 guys are going to make the team. There's really 6 of us on paper that could make it, but only 3 are gonna. And I'm gonna be one of those 3. We're going to Barcelona, my coach and I. First round, it was a breeze. Second round, again, a breeze. Until the last water jump, when I slipped. I got my spike plate instead of let me give you, can I share a screen right here? I want to show you an image or two. We do that?
Just hit the green button at the bottom.
Green button at bottom.
On the bottom of your screen, you should see a green button that says share.
Okay, give me a sec, guys.
You might have to wake up your screen, Brad.
Yeah, I think I've got it.
You click on the Zoom window and it'll be at the bottom as a screen share.
And there we are. Thank you. Do you have my screen?
Yes.
Okay, this is Chick Hislop. If there's anybody that's a true track fan on the call today, you'd probably know at least his name, if not his face. He's one of the most famous track coaches in human history. This man literally changed the face of track because he reinvented one of the events. Okay, when Chick Hislop came to Weber State, his job, the guy that gave me the job, he says, I'm going to give you the lowest budget in the Big Sky Conference, Chick. Here's your job. Don't be last in the Big Sky Conference. Now think about how uninspiring that job description is. Lowest budget, don't be last. Okay, this man was raised by his father, this man that was in relentless pursuit of excellence. And he says, not only am I not going to be last in the Big Sky, I'm going to take the lowest budget and we're going to be first in the Big Sky. In fact, we're going to be one of the best teams in the nation from this perch of Weber State University or Weber State College at that time. This man reinvented this sport right here called the 3,000-meter steeplechase. I'm not going to go into great detail here, but these aren't hurdles, although they are 36 inches high, intermediate hurdle height. These are barriers, and they're heavy. Okay, the mounts here are weighted. A steeplechaser does not negotiate one of these things lightly. If you hit a hurdle, the hurdle goes down. You hit a barrier, there's usually blood in a 3,000-meter steeplechase. Here's what he did. He reinvented the sport. Okay, how is that relevant? People have been running the steeplechase for a couple of centuries by the time Chick Hislop came along. And they'd always done it the same way. If you're not quite fast enough leg speed to run the 1,500 meters, and you're also in that sweet spot of maybe you're not strong enough to run the 5,000 meters, then what do? Not fast enough for the 5K or the 1,500, not strong enough for the 5K. Oh, go ahead and jump in the steeplechase. Good luck. We're all counting on you. Seriously, that's the way the steeplechase was run. If the default people, all the rejects, basically, the ones that can't be great at either of the others on either side of it, then they just toss them in the steeple and says, good luck, don't get hurt, or good luck not getting hurt, right? And what Hislop did, and this is where some of us are right now, including me in some ways, I think that all of humanity is actually right here. Because there are so many changes that are happening right dang now that all of us get to reinvent how we run our race. Here's what he did. He took the 400-meter intermediate hurdle discipline. Those of you that were track kiddos in high school, it's the 300 intermediate hurdle in high school. Collegiate and internationally, they run it at 400 meters. Same thing, 36-inch hurdles. He took that discipline and he picked up all the things that are done in that discipline and he set it down over the top of us steeplechasers. He even renamed the sport because he understood the power of story. He called it the distance hurdle event. And as soon as cross country was over in late November, and we went to the national championships nearly every year in those years because we were so good. And just after cross country season was over, he would get us in the Swinson gym. This is before the days of the indoor gym at Weber State. And we would start on the ground doing what he called the hurdle ritual. And it was just teaching our bodies how to get in a position to hurdle a barrier. And then we'd stand up. After a couple of weeks, he'd do standing drills against a wall. And then we'd do walk-through drills. Halfway through the winter, when we had all the pieces together, then he would let us run through. A steeplechaser at Weber State, back in those days, standing on their first steeplechase starting line, has been over more barriers than most professional steeplechasers in their whole career. It wasn't just powerful stories, it was also backed up by this ritual, as he called it, these specific techniques for getting better. And that's why Weber State became so dominant and so powerful. And Weber State was the mecca for all things steeplechasers. In fact, there were so many great steeplechasers coming out of Weber State, including the American record holder. The top 10 list at Weber State was better than any other top 10 list in the United States. They were so good that the U.S. Olympic team put $30,000 into a pool and flew all of the best steeplechasers in America out to Weber State so that Chick Hislop could train them on how to be a better hurdler. There was a coach that a former Olympian, two-time Olympian named Ed Eyestone that begged a job, and he came and worked with Chick for 2 years. Ed Eyestone took the hurdle ritual back to Brigham Young University, and after years and years of struggle, finally perfected it like Hislop had. And last summer, of 3 men and 3 women steeplechasers on the U.S. team, two of the men were BYU kids, and one of the women was a BYU. So BYU had half the steeplechasers in the Olympic Games. That's the power of getting better. That's the power of reinvention. And I'm gonna submit that again, all of us get to reinvent now, because the world is going to be so different in 5 years from now. But for those of us sitting unemployed today, and I'm one of them, folks, part of my job today is to go find another job, right? I find speaking jobs. That's how I've made my living for almost 30 years. And I'm unemployed today, right? I'm volunteering right here in front of you, but I've got to go out and job search just like the rest of you. And I get to reinvent myself as well. Comments on that before we move on. The power of reinvention. One cool benefit of being an innovator and a reinventor is that when the Olympic Games came to America the last time, the outdoor games, the summer games, the track coaches throughout the nation get to decide who the Olympic coaches are. And guess who they voted as the head Olympic distance coach from little old Weber State University? Okay, they chose Chick because Chick's the guy that's the innovator. He's the smartest guy in the room. That's why he got famous, because he reinvented this sport. Okay, so here I am at the Olympic trials, and I'm ranked 19th in the world. We're going to Barcelona, and I blew it. I tripped over the last water barrier, ended up in the water. I took 4 young men behind me as Olympic dreams away as we crashed in this colossal mess of sharp track spikes and torn flesh, sweat, blood. We clawed our way out of that 12 feet of water, sprinted the last 158 meters to the finish line. Barcelona, baby? How about I didn't even make the finals of the Olympic trials? Didn't even make the finals. After about a month of a pity party, and some of you recognize what that means, I called my coach. I said, let's go to Atlanta in 96. He says, I knew you'd call. And so I signed up for another 4 years of hard things. And then I ripped myself something in my hip before the trials. And I flew around the country trying to find a surgeon that could help me. I didn't even make it to the starting line at Atlanta for the Olympic trials. And now I'm too old to make the Sydney games. So I switched my story. I married a girl on the track team, figured we'd make some hybrids, and we did. Our kids are all just like crazy fast runners. And we had a blast being a dad. And I had this really cool career at Weber Human Services doing drug prevention, teaching kids how to stay off drugs, training teachers how to teach their kids how to stay off drugs. And raising this family. Then I began a professional speaking career, quit my day job, took this on the road. I'm all over the country speaking and having a blast, and just unawares, I wasn't thinking about what I was thinking about that day as I was walking into Idaho State University Holt Arena for the Simplot Games to watch my oldest son, Jacob, perform as a senior in high school. I do remember as I walked in, I heard the blast of a gun, and I kind of trotted in to see which race was being contested. And there was a bunch of gray-haired, balding fellas on this track at a high school track meet. I'm like, what? Oh, it's the coach's mile. The what? Yeah, it's the coach's mile. It's a annual tradition at the Simplot Games. I'm just sitting there watching these guys run, thinking, how sad. You know, old guys trying to recapture past glory at a high school track meet, really? And I'm pitching on these guys as they're running around this 200-meter banked wooden track. And about halfway through, I'm kind of mesmerized by it. Another lap goes by, and I knew. Another lap and another lap. And as these guys turn that last turn, pain etched into their faces, I knew I was supposed to do this. It didn't make any sense to me. And I tried to push it away, but I knew I was supposed to get back on the track. I'm 43 years old at this point. I had never thought about this at all, ever. But I walked away from that experience thinking, holy smoke, I'm feeling like I'm supposed to get back on the track. I told my wife, she says, you don't have time for that. And she knows what that means, because she knows how I'm kind of built. I don't have a fruit tree. I've got 20 of them. I don't have a beehive. I've got 150 of them. I don't have kids. I got 6 of them, right? When I do something, I'm kind of I was on a speaking assignment I think it was in some little tiny town in Montana, and on the wall there's a engraving. It says, if something's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. Okay, I'm not promoting that, by the way, because I don't know that that's a very healthy way to live, but I identify with that because that's kind of how I do things. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing, again, to a fault, but that's the way I am. I fought that feeling for months, and finally like 8 months later, 9 months later, it was that next fall that I decided to give into it. And I got with the Ogden High School track team and started working out with them. I've got a goal. I'm gonna maybe try and break a 5-minute mile. I got to another coach's high school mile at Brigham Young University, around 4 minutes 43 seconds in the mile. Then I ripped my quad muscle. It took months to heal, but I still felt like I was supposed to do this. So almost a year later, I got even more fit. I went back 2 years to the day at the Simplot Games Coaches Mile. I'm on that starting line this year, 2 years from the day that I had that epiphany. And I ran a mile in 4 minutes 32 seconds that day. Then I ripped my quad muscle. It took months to heal. The next year, I still felt called. I called my retired college coach. And I said, Coach, he'd been retired 6 years at that point. I said, I ran 4:32 in the mile last year. He said, you did what? How old are you? And I said, well, I'm 45 years old this year, Coach. He said, Gads. And then he asked a question. He says, why are you calling me about this? Kind of took me by surprise. Great coaches ask great questions, don't they? I said, I don't know, Coach. I thought you might be interested. He says, no, Brad, why are you really calling me about this? And now I'm going, oh, crap. I don't know, Coach. I just did this thing and I worked really hard and I can't stay healthy. And I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to do with this. But I think I'm supposed to do something with this, Coach. He says, now we're talking. And then he asked the next question. What's the world record in the masters age group, 45 to 49, in the mile? And we looked it up, 420.19. 420.19. Now that's an order of magnitude more difficult than a 432. And in fact, show of hands, how many of you, these aren't just numbers, you know what a 5-minute mile is. How many of you, 432 mile? Does anyone here know anything about that? Okay, yeah, for most of you, yeah. Is anybody, pipe in, tell me what your thoughts on a 5-minute mile. How difficult would that be?
That's
Kobe,
moving. That's moving.
Kobe,
That's
you got to
really
know.
quick.
Say again?
That's a full-on sprint and then some.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I'd be happy if I could do a 12-minute mile.
Well, I feel like we need some calibration for what Coach and I are attempting to do. We got together. Go ahead.
5-minute mile is smoking.
So the world record's 420.19. A guy named John Hinton, actually an American from upstate New York, ran a mile at 45 years old, Kobe, in 4 minutes, 20 seconds, 0.19. So we start working together. And we're working really hard, and I get fit finally after almost 6 months of working. He finally lets me on a starting line. I ran a mile in my first mile, 4:26. 2 weeks later, I ran 4:23. 2 weeks later, he broke my foot. This is a stress fracture. He worked me too hard. I'm on crutches. I got a bone scan showing this fracture. I said, what now, Coach? He says, well, maybe we figured out why that's a 30-year-old world record we're trying to break. But maybe someone as old as you can't train hard enough to run any faster than John Hinton did, 420.19. Oh, and I got a broken heart to go with my broken foot because I knew I was supposed to do this thing. And then he got a rare little grin. He says, or maybe it can be done. And I just haven't figured it out yet. He says, Brad, I'm the guru. You're my guinea pig. Obviously, if we train you like a college kid, like I used to, stuff's going to fall off. Okay, so we're going to reinvent what it means to train at a world-class level for a person as old as you are. And now we're back in reinvention mode, folks. Here's the thing. The environment had changed significantly, right? And because of that, it required us to change. the way we were doing our business. Folks, this is relevant to what we're doing here. All of us get to do this. The things I used to do to build my speaking business, they don't work very well anymore. So I'm in the midst of trying to figure out how to change. And many of my colleagues are a lot more light on their feet, especially the younger ones. And they're embracing these new tools and they're kicking my butt, frankly. So I'm in the midst of a reinvention as well. Scott, Kobe, Liz, Steve, all of us get to reinvent the way we do our business. We get to reinvent how it used to be that you go and get yourself educated and then go get it attached to a company and you hang on for the ride. Okay, that's a recipe for failure nowadays. I was just listening to a podcast. I haven't read his book yet, but there's a man, one of my friends, Kent Whipple. You guys know the Whipple Service Champions Plumbing, Heating and Air company. Kent's the founder is one of my best friends. He sent me a podcast a couple weeks ago. Actually, Steve, I was listening to this podcast. I was driving up to Davis County for that program that you and I did together up at the conference center. I was listening to Jeff Woods in this podcast. Jeff Woods, I would commend this to you. He wrote a book called the AI-driven leader. I'm going to read this book. I haven't yet. That I listened to an hour-long podcast, and I'm just convinced that this can help me. So Jeff Woods, author of The AI-Driven Leader. So that's a book I would commend to you based on my hour that I spent with him. He tells a story of finishing up his first job. He had been an intern, and then they out of college, and I don't even remember. Maybe it was Microsoft. I don't remember. A company that I recognized anyway. And he was finished up. He was hired for 2 years, and he could have stayed, but he talked to the CEO, and he says, "What company should I go to next?" And he says, and this man, this is years ago, before artificial intelligence, he said, "Jeff, you're asking the wrong question. You just asked me what company I should go to next. Wrong question. The right question is, what area of expertise should I become the expert at?" That's the right question. Because if you get really good at some area if you become an expert in some field with some new whatever, right? Technology, figure out what you want to be the best at. And then you're never going to have to worry about where you work, because opportunities are going to come to you. He says it's the best advice he's ever received from anybody in terms of his career. So I would maybe submit that to you, Liz. What company are you going to go to next? Wrong question. Mm-hmm. How about what set of skills do I want to build next that is going to serve humanity, right? Serve industry. That's the right question, and get really good at that. And then you're never going to have a lack of opportunities, no matter what our age, right? That may be the best question. So, Coach, comments before we move on. Again, Tony, I saw you nodding your head in agreement. Maybe do you have an idea for us?
No, I just don't have a question for you. I think I'm thoroughly enjoying your presentation, though. You're hitting on some really good key things, and it's got me thinking. That's kind of what I was hoping for out of this as well.
Nice. So what I'm gonna put it to you, John. I'm calling you out. Take yourself off mute if you want to. What area of expertise? What's the next area you're either going to deepen or create in your work skill set profile?
It'll probably be application of AI to streamlining business processes for quality management.
Now you handled that, me calling you out like a pro. Folks, I did that actually on purpose, because every one of us right now are being asked to take ourselves off mute and stand and deliver some some answer to that question right there. What am I going to do? What area of expertise? Okay, there's a new job description that had never been invented when I graduated from college. It's called prompt engineer. Really? I'm gonna learn I'm gonna become the best at speaking to a robot, right? To a computer. Yeah, that's a thing, right? Some of you and maybe your peers are gonna make your next fortune in industries that have not been invented yet. Some of you will. Some of your peers will do that. No one's even thought of them yet. Well, Coach and I were in a spot where we just could not operate according to the old environment because we were in a new environment. And it was a constantly changing. It wasn't like, oh, we're masters athletes now, so we got to do it this way. And my kids over the years they still give me a bad time about getting hurt so much. And I'm kind of jumping to the chase here, but in my story, but I get hurt a lot. But here's the thing. Coach explained to me one time, I said, why are we getting me hurt so much? He says, Brad, there is an invisible line out there. If we don't work hard enough and get as close as we can to the line, then we're not going to get you fit enough to run faster than any human being ever has. So we got to get as close to that line as we can. If we ever once go over the line, that invisible line, then something falls off and now we're having to start from scratch because you got hurt. And it's, weeks long, if not months long, broken training cycle. And we got to start all over again. So that's in the master's track world, that is the discipline, getting close to that line, but not going over. I would submit that we gotta be willing to push the envelope a little bit in our effort. And the other thing is that line isn't static. We can't just like a military campaign, Kobe. We send out an advanced force to test where the enemy is, right? We don't know that that's where the enemy is in tomorrow. We just know where they're at right dang now, right? So we got to send another patrol out to do it again because that front line is constantly changing, and that's the case with the master's career as well. So we got me back the next year. I'm healed up.
I took away your screen, Brad. So if you have a screen to share, I took you off screen so we can see you. So
okay, let's do it again then. Here we go.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So I am healed up from my broken foot and I'm fit again. It's about a 6-month training cycle. And I get to the Olympic or to the Idaho State University Holt Arena at the Rocky Mountain Shootout. And I'm in a mile race with these college kids. And I ran 4:26 to start the season. He sent me to Boise State to run 4:23, or to run 4:23. I ran 4:21. Coach, I can do it. I can break the world record. I know I can. Now I'm believing his story. His response, duh. That's what I've been trying to tell you. He sent me to Boston to the Reggie Lewis Center to break the world record in this prestigious Grand Prix race meet. I won the race with a terrible head cold. I ran 4:24. It's the fastest I could run that day. I got one more shot. This is Ithaca, Cornell University. I never forget how nervous I was as I walked up to this historic rock building that this 200-meter indoor track is housed. I cannot believe what I'm seeing as I walk up to this building thinking this place is called Barton Hall. My name is Brad Barton. I own this place, right? As I walk in to this historic 100-year-old building and I'm seeing the Ivy League pennants hanging from the rafters. And yeah, I was so excited. And then they lined us up. After a 52.5-minute warm up, this is science, folks, 52.5 minutes. That's how long my warm up cycle is. They started lining us up and they kept lining us up. They put me in lane 6, 3 fellas deep and fired the gun. I'm stuck in lane 3 for the first lap. You cannot break a world record in lane 3 in an indoor 200-meter flat track. I'm desperate to find my way into the inside lane. And just after the first lap, at about 230 meters into the race, I saw my opening and I dove for it. It was my fault. There wasn't enough room. The kid behind me clipped my heel. I fell hard to the inside rail, separated my shoulder. It was a violent experience for a 47-year-old man. I jumped up and finished making that turn. And 15 meters behind the stragglers, my mind is reeling. I'm like, no, not after all this work, after all this suffering. And then I thought, wait a minute. Coach just trained you not to operate under the circumstances. Okay, you could still do this, just little bit by little bit. Halfway through the race, I'm catching the stragglers. 2 laps to go. I'm challenging for the lead. I'm back on pace. I'm going to do this. And then that last turn, everything just fades to gray, and I don't remember finishing the race. I remember coming back to consciousness kind of in waves as the Brown coach has got this arm and the Dartmouth coach has got this arm. The Brown coach is in tears. I'll never forget that. Through the haze of pain, I noticed the dude is crying. Okay, it wasn't about me. None of them know anything about me. They just know that this famous coach they also admire and respect has grabbed one of his former, All-American steeplechasers, going to try and do some things that had never been done. There were articles been written. And he says, I'm sorry, Brad, you missed it again. It was a half an hour later before I could walk on my own. I found a quiet place at Barton Hall in the stairwell, and I called my coach, and I choked out. I'm in pain. I could barely hold the phone. My arms are aching so bad still. I choked out, Coach, I can't do this. It's too hard. And my coach shoots back, remember what we're doing here, Brad. I'm like, oh, I know, Coach, we're doing stuff that's never been done. But I can't do this. It's too hard. He says, Brad, if this was easy, it would have already been done. I'm like, I hate this man because he's always right. And then his voice softened. He says, Brad, get back on the plane, get back to Ogden. We'll get Doc Charman to look at your separated shoulder. I'll adjust some of your workouts. Brad, the Columbia coach is a personal friend of mine. There's one last meet reserved. It's called the last chance meet for all the kids on the bubble of getting to the NCAA championships. It's only for college kids. Brad, I will somehow get you on that starting line at the Armory. He said, let's get it done 2 weeks from tonight at the last chance meet at the Armory. In 2 weeks and about 4.5 hours after that call, this is what happened.
The first section of the men's mile, we have Tim Cousins, Columbia, Scott Weeks, Syracuse Chargers, Miles Schroeder, Georgetown.
Is this going to play or no?
It's playing.
Oh, it is playing. Okay, I didn't see it playing. Hang on just a second. There's a better way to do this, but I can't. Okay, here we go. Well, let's try this again. Sorry, guys.
First section of the men's mile, we have Tim Cousins, Columbia, Scott Weeks, Syracuse.
I'm in
Chargers,
black.
Miles Schroeder, Georgetown.
And people were talking about this.
The men's masters mile record of 4:20.19. James Frick, Johns Hopkins, and Ben Burke from Georgetown. They're all. Watch out for lane 5. The masters runner going for 4:20.19 is what his goal is today, as it has been all season, to get that masters mile. 63 for Brad Barton.
I'm dead last.
19.
But I'm on pace. I'm better coach than these Ivy League punks.
Just rolling.
Deep into the race now.
Brad Barton now making a move down third. Barton, the Masters runner. He's looking good. Tim Cousins, 1 to go, 3:42. T Cousins rolling. Brad Barton is also rolling. Now in second. Tim Cousins, 4:13.68 unofficially. Saunders, Barton. Unofficially new American Masters record for age group 45 to 49. He is wrong. 4:15.67 for Brad Barton. New Masters American record age group 45 to 49. Getting the first call.
Okay, so what if no matter what your stinking age is, you could decide that you're going to dig deep into one area and just get good at it? Okay, in our case, what we decided we wanted to do is become the best in the world at something, however obscure, right? the best old guy miler ever, right? What a crazy idea. But that's the one we chose. Again, it's a metaphor, folks. What are you willing to become the best in the world at? There's a book I'd commend to you if you haven't read this. It's an oldie but goodie, and it's still relevant today. It's called Good to Great. How many of you have recognized or have read this book? Jim Collins. Listen to this book. It's amazing. Good to Great, Jim Collins, and a whole team of people that help him write this book. There's a principle. One of the chapters talks about the hedgehog principle. And in a nutshell, here's what it is. It is what you are passionate about, what you could be profitable with, and what you're willing to become the best in the world at. So again, passion, profitability, and what you can be the best in the world at. Where these three things, passion, profit, and best in the world, where those three intersect, it sounds goofy. It's kind of a stretch for the title, because of the hedgehog principle. And if we're willing to look at those three items, what are you passionate about? And it's not just passionate, because that doesn't pay the bill necessarily. What can you also be profitable with? You can make some money and feed your family with. And what are you willing to be, at least attempt to be the best in the world at, or the best in your state at, or in the best in your community? What can you be really expert at? Where these three things intersect, that's your PowerPoint, or as Jim Collins says, the hedgehog principle. This is what we did, and we went out and in some obscure way made history, right? And then we did it again. This is us about a month later, going back to our roots, the 3,000 meter steeplechase. Coach and I set an American record that day. We went to
your screen again. Sorry, I wanted to see you.
That's okay. That's good. Here we go. Am I sharing the right screen?
You're sharing your desktop.
Okay, that's not the right screen then. Hang on.
It's a good looking desktop.
I have two screens. Couldn't do without them. So we set an American record. Went to Portland, failed 3 weeks later. Went to Seattle for the last chance. It was the end of the season, and I failed again. I missed it by 1.5 seconds. And I was so discouraged. One of my sponsors sent my wife and I to Europe to go compete in the World Olympic, or the World Masters Games. I set another American record there, and I came back just so discouraged. I said, Coach, I'm supposed to get that steeple world record, but I can't run any harder than I did this year. He says, then we're going to double your mileage. I'm like, Coach, you don't understand. I'm telling the expert that he doesn't understand. Coach, I have a lateral meniscus bucket handle tear in my left knee. There's hardly any cartilage left on my knee. There's no way that my body will handle 70 miles a week training. He says, then you won't get the world record, will you? I'm like, what? He says, but if you don't try it, you're not going to get the world record, will you? I'm like, dang, I hate this man. He's always right. So we tried it 70 miles a week. And I came back the next year so fit that we took 9.5 seconds off the indoor 3,000 meter world record, and then got hurt again. Went through that invisible line, something fell off, and I was about 6 weeks, almost 10 weeks later. I was finally healed and fit again. I got one last shot at the 3,000 meter steeplechase. This is my only chance in this season. I'm 48 years old, an old man in my age group, my 5-year age group. World governing body keeps a world age group records in 5-year increments. I'm at a place called Vanderbilt University. Anyone know Nashville? And I step onto this starting line after a 58.5 minute warm-up cycle, because it's a steeple. We warm up differently. And the runners, the starter was calling us to the line, and the race director, he's announcing from the field. He's got He's got a mic in his hand. He runs up to the starter. Stop, stop, stop. And he walks up to me and he says, what's the world record you're trying to break today? I said, it's 916, 916.10, 916.1. He's like, 916, no, it's 96. And I love the look in the kids next to me. He's like, what? I'm here to run a race and he's here to do what? I just love that picture. The gun goes off and I am dead last again. But guess who is exactly on pace, right? Coach and I have planned our race and we are racing our plan. Okay, the second lap, I'm exactly on pace. Third lap, I'm exactly on pace. Fourth lap, I'm doing a clinic on how to run a steeplechase in an even pace, just like Coach and I planned that we're going to do. This is me taking a shot of me taking just after the mile mark. And I know that I'm breaking the world record today because we are doing this exactly right. We've planned it and then we're racing it. Then this next image is just too good. Doug Robinson, I don't know how many of you are in the state of Utah. Are any of you here in Utah? Are you all over the place? Some of you are. Deseret News sports writer, my favorite sports writer on the planet. His name is Doug Robinson. And he did an article on what Coach and I are up to. And it was extensive interviews. He was on the phone with me for an hour, Coach for an hour, my wife for half an hour. And then when we are all done, he calls me up about a week later. He says, Brad, we're going to run this as a feature article in the front page of the Deseret News. We need an image to go with the front page. And I says, well, okay, I've got some good ones I can send you, but the one you really want, I don't own it. It's owned by a guy named Foon Fu, a track coach from Tennessee. And he took this shot and sent it to me. And he says, don't bother. We don't buy images. We either take them ourselves or we use free ones. I says, well, okay, I'll send you what I got, Doug, but the one you really, but I'll send you this other one just for a chuckle. And I hit send on the email, and I get a call from Doug Robinson about 5 minutes later. He says, Brad, how do I get a hold of Foon Fu? I want to buy this image. And this is the front page of the Deseret News right here. Guys, this you can't make this stuff up. The race director with about 300 meters into this to go in this race, and I'm challenging for the lead. This guy's jumping up and down on the infield with his mic. He's yelling, he's screaming. He says, "This guy's old enough to be their father." Guys, Coach and I ran a steeplechase race that day so fast that it would have won the Big Sky Conference championship that year. It would have won the Western Athletic Conference and the Mountain West Conference as well. It was impossibly fast time. Impossible. What if you could get really good at just one thing and just dug deep on this? I'm 48 years old. We took about a 6 months off that I badly needed break. I came back with a year to go before our new age group, and I was super fit just before I turned 50. And just before I turned 50, just a few days away, I broke my foot in an accident, a running accident, and then I get fit again, get healed and fit, and then I ripped my knee again, more surgery. And I get fit again, and I took a really hard fall in a running accident with a bike, and I get a terrible head injury. And then I got fit again. I broke my foot, and then I got fit again. Another head injury. It's a freak deal. Still bothers me, that one, with word placement. You guys have probably noticed that I've got some word recall issues because of a head injury, right? Then I got fit again. I ripped my quad muscle again. Guys, I was world record fit 6 times in a 3-year period. And I never got to the starting line. I called my coach in early February and I said, Coach, could we just be done? I don't feel called anymore. Every step is a struggle. It's an ordeal to go out for a run. I just don't want to do this anymore. Can we be done? And my coach is so gracious. He says, Brad, you don't have anything to prove anybody. we got at that point 5 American records and 3 world records. He said, it's great, you're terrific, you're fantastic. It was about a 10-minute kumbaya session, and we were just saying our salutations and and say, keep in touch, and sure appreciate having a chance to work with you, and I love you, man, and all that. And then I said, okay, see you later, coach. He says, could I just ask you one more question? I'm like, oh, son. Yeah, coach. He says, why were you doing this? What do you mean, why am I doing this? I thought we were working so hard so we could go break some records, coach. He said, no. Specifically, why were you doing this? Brad, we've been working on this M50 to 54 age group master's project now for 4 years. And we've never gotten to a starting line, and that you've persisted and consistently kept after it. Why were you doing it? And I didn't have an answer for him. He says, well, that right there might be your problem. Tell you what, just because it's me, don't quit training yet, but answer that question and call me when you get the answer. Why were you doing this? Okay, that's what it was, past tense, because I'd quit, right? I called him back 2 weeks later, and I started the phone call, and I'm going to paraphrase, darn you, coach. He starts laughing. Why are you cussing at me? And I said, because I'm excited again. He said, and I told him, I said, I know exactly why I'm doing this. There's a man named Nolan Shahid that 18 years ago, at the age of 50, he ran a mile in 4 minutes, 25 seconds. Coach, no human beings ever run faster than 4:25. At past the age of 50. We are supposed to break that record. He says, now we're talking again, Brad. And it was about just less than 3 months after that second phone call that I stepped onto the same track, actually 5 years earlier, at the Music City Distance Carnival. It was the meet. And this is what happened.
World record of 4:25.04.
Is it playing?
Yep, it is.
Shane Healy wears zip number 1. Brad Barton wears zip number 2, coming in at 4:25.
Shane Healy is an Olympian, former Olympian.
They want the world mile record of 4:25.
Olympic 1500 meter runner. They flew him in from Australia to break this race, to break this record. I'm in white, running my pace, not his. The guy in red is our rabbit.
From Ireland, Shane Healy. Pacer right on pace, 2:10 at 800.
Halfway through, and I'm still running my pace, not his.
Pace. Shane Healy, so far so good now. Looks to have a good chance at a new world record for the 50, the 54.
No one's ever run under 4:25. 18 years.
And Barton, they're going to help each other. See if both of these guys can maybe break this world record. Shane Healy and Brad Barton, they're going to get a nice standing ovation. They want to see a new world record, and these guys are right on pace. 400 to go. Healy and Barton.
How does this apply to where you're at?
Starting to bring that neck down a little bit, just settling into his pace, leaning in. You can see the legs churning, the arms pumping, as Brad Barton now is going to sit right on his right hip and wait. And now there he goes. He's not waiting anymore. With 2:30 to go, Brad Barton, he wants the world record. Can both of them get under 4:25.04, an 18-year-old record? It might not stand for much longer. But it's Brad Barton to take the win, and that is a new world masters record. As we wait, and here it is, 4:19.59 for
Guys,
Brad
what
Barton,
if?
the 18-year-old world record.
What if?
4:25.04.
I think every one of you have some vague idea of what Roger Bannister did, right? No one's ever broke 4 minutes, but yet he does it, And within 3 months, 3 other fellows had done it. Okay, for 18 years, no one's been under 25, 425. And within 2.5 months, there were 3 other performances under 425. Okay, how does that happen? Because the story changed. That's how it happens, folks. You want to break through a barrier? Okay, the default was set in the minds of the masters athletes that no one can break 425. And then the default was reset, and then people start doing it. What if? Still, Coach and I are the only one that's ever gone under 420. Okay, and that record stood now for 6 years, 7 years, I guess 7 years this summer. Comments before we move on? What if?
I just had to say that's pretty inspirational. So good on you.
Thank you. My favorite title of the articles, there's lots of articles written, but my favorite title was written by a guy named Stone. He was writing this article for Runner's World, and after 20 minutes into this, he says, okay, we got to slow down. It was an hour-long interview. He says, I'm going to write one for my local hometown paper. And it's after reading about what the journey it took to get to the starting line. The article is Barton's Book of Job. Those of you who know the Old Testament, right? Where stuff just kept falling off, from ceaseless injuries to world record at mile at 53. Guys, what if you could just get really focused on one thing and then go do some things that have never been done in your industry? It's possible. It's possible, because Coach and I have done it. Let me end this part with one last little bit there. Let's go back 5 years from this. There are 11 things that have to happen in order to get a world record ratified. One of them is to run a world record time. Okay, it's very complex, right? We gathered up all the paperwork, got all the signatures and all the documentation, and we sent this into the world governing body. And it was officially rejected as a world record. Yep. There was an inquiry made, and I got this email response a few weeks later, and it goes something like this. It's written kind of weird, so I think it was an old Google Translate, like back when they were first doing this kind of stuff. Dear Mr. Barton, please forgive us. Now, you cannot make this stuff up, folks. When we set the defaults for the computer that handles the world records, we set the default such that it would reject any times that are unrealistic. We have further researched your Music City Distance Carnival performance. We have figured out what the problem was, why it was rejected. We have changed the defaults of the M45 to 49 3,000 meter steeplechase. Set it so the default's up. Please formally resubmit your paperwork. It will be accepted this time. And congratulations on your new world record. Guys, Coach and I broke their dang computer. We forced the world governing body to change out the story their computer was following, because over the years, my coaches had changed out my stories. And I submit that that's where we're all at right now. We're rejecting opportunities. We're rejecting joy in our most significant relationships. We're rejecting a more fulfilling spiritual life because we got defaults set in ways that aren't as effective and aren't as utilitous as the ones that we could have. So let's make a commitment to get better. And don't just get better across the board, specifically get better at one thing and get really good at that. And you're never going to want for opportunities, folks. Comments. I do have some other things I wanted to do, and I hope to leave myself more than 9 minutes to do it, but comments on this. What do you got?
We just had another track star join us.
Oh, who's that?
name's Garrett. Do you know a Garrett?
I know lots of Garretts.
You know one that has last name that you have?
Yeah, that's my boy.
He just joined us.
Is Garrett on this call, really?
He is.
Hi, Dad.
Hey, Garrett. Speaking of a guy that resets defaults, I maybe could turn this last portion over to him. Let's take a couple. If you can keep a comment short. What did you identify with my story, or our story? How is this your story?
Well, I've always been a jack of all trades in the industry, and you're making sense to me as far as trying to focus on something that I think will be very useful and very valuable to people and becoming an expert. So that's great advice.
Thank you, Mitchell. Who else?
Brad, you want to take off your screen share so we can see everybody? Thank you.
There we are.
Hey, Brad, this is Matt Denning. I don't know if my video is working here. I think I've got a real slow internet connection, but just wanted to chime in. I don't know if you or Garrett had remembered me. I'm a master's athlete that was training at Weber State while you were on your quest for your mile. But I just resonate with your story here. And I had a very similar story. And to me, what resonated about your story is you just can't limit your mindset of what you're able to do. And you have to stick with your goal in spite of any obstacles that come up, or if you ever, get in a group or get somebody that tells you that something can't be done and you believe that, then you're never going to reach your goal. And for me as a master's athlete, just like you, in a similar story, my performance is just like yours, and your achievements, it's sky is the limit if you believe in yourself.
Yeah, and a big part, thank you, Matt. A big part of the picture for me was my coach. I don't know if you recognized, I hope I never said this because it's just blatantly untrue, that I set a world record, that I ran this fast. No, this, I don't know if you noticed this, but I talk about we did this, that we ran this fast because it was me and I had a mentor, right? In this case, a world-class coach. You've got a great coach right here in Steve Botter. This guy's been doing this for a long, long time and has helped a lot of people and mentored them through this discouraging, at times, just excruciatingly discouraging, long struggle for some of you, right? And that human connection is just super, super important for some of you. And so what about setting up a goal and then backing it up with some very vivid stories? Some people call it visual imagery, or there's various technologies at doing a vision board, creating a vision of you accepting opportunity, having multiple opportunities, right? In your future. Tell more better stories. We can eliminate. My high school coach used to say, you're not responsible for the thoughts that entered the stage of your mind, but you are responsible for the ones that you allow to remain, you invite to remain and perform on that stage of your mind. So thoughts happen, but they don't have to continue to happen, because we can do what I call a replacement therapy and put new thoughts, new stories into, and over time with those new stories, reprogram our defaults. Okay, so the last couple minutes that I have here, I wanted to toss an idea or two at you. Right now, there is a convergence of some technologies that are going to change our world. And this deserves way more than just a mention, but those of you that want to dig a little deeper, one of the best resources is about maybe 70 minutes of YouTube video from a guy named Tony Seba. I defy you to listen and they're split up. I wish it was all in one spot, just a 90-minute or a 70-minute bit, but it's broken up into 20-minute segments roughly. Go to and look at Tony Seba, TonySeba. He's got a company called Rethink X. And the disruption, put in Tony Seba disruption, and you can find these vids and just look at the first one. But he talks about and there's lots of other people that are talking about this. He talks about the disruption in transportation. And he's predicting the cost per mile of transport is going to go down an order of magnitude in the next 10 years. And this is 2 years old stuff. So in the next 8 years, the cost of transport is come down an order of magnitude per mile. And this has to do with electric vehicles, autonomous driving. And it's amazing where this is happening. There's a couple of different technologies that are actually legit. One of them is a really elaborate, in my opinion, a really elaborate party trick in Waymo. There's another company that is doing it for real, and they're going to create autonomous robo-taxi system that can operate in any place in the United States, or any place in the world even. And because they're doing it with sight, and it's costs about $10,000 for a car, just $2,000 or $3,000 for the cameras and the compute to do this. So he talks about TaaS, transportation as a service. So maybe ownership of cars are going to go away. Okay, when it's a fourth of the cost to just hire a robo-taxi to take you wherever you want, whenever you want, with the right size vehicle that you want, why would you have a car? Why would you own a car anymore? The second one is energy. Energy is in the midst of a huge sea change right now. These are not just revolutions; they're phase changes. This goes, like Garrett and I are beekeepers, from a little worm in a cell to a fully a functioning adult bee, right? From a caterpillar to a butterfly, as Tony Seba calls it. It's a phase change. We're going to have what he calls superpowers. So the marginal cost of energy is nearly going to be free, with renewables and battery storage. The third one is food. Food is another. He calls it precision fermentation technology, where we're going to ferment better tasting proteins than what we can get from a cow, better tasting fats than we can get from milk or whatever, with better vitamins. It's going to cut the cost, put the cost on par with agriculture, the way we've been doing it for 10,000 years. It's going to cut the cost to an order of magnitude, with 1/5 of the water and 0.5% of the land use as well. And this is going to happen not in our lifetime, but in the next decade. And then a decade after that, the world is going to change significantly. And it's going to open up tons and tons of space, because we won't need agriculture the way we're doing it right now. It's called the Great Land Liberation. We've got Optimus robots and other companies that are putting these together. Cost of labor is going to decrease. Now, that's not a bad thing, because we've got a huge shortage of labor. So we're not going to lose our jobs anytime soon. Cost of compute is going to go to near zero as well. There's going to be a deflationary effect of all of this. It's not just a transition, it's a transformation. It's not just improvements, it's a phase change. It's not just getting better at what we're doing, it's actually redefining the way that our economy works. So there's a lot right there in 6 minutes, but we are living on the edge of maybe the greatest time in human history right now. And the opportunities are plentiful for all of us. And that's what I believe.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, round of applause. Okay.
Jacob, it's really great to see you, buddy. Or Garrett. So shoot, that's my oldest son is Jacob, and I do that a lot, don't I, Garrett? Sorry.
Yeah, my name is Garrett, by the way.
Yeah. By the way, and who's up with you? You got
Oh,
someone
this is
with
my
you?
girlfriend Lily.
Hey, Lily.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you, pretty lady.
I'd
Well,
like
it's
to.
crazy, but Garrett is a world record holder as well in the 4x1 mile relay in high school.
How did you know this?
It's very impressive.
One of
Yeah,
the
I appreciate
articles.
you remembering that, Kent. It's good to see you, by the way.
Good to see you.
Oh, this is Kent. I know you. Good to see
Hey,
you. I
Brad.
didn't make that connection, Kent.
Yeah.
Yeah, Garrett and I are the only pro- we're aware of
Father,
anyway, the only
son.
father-son duo. Go ahead, Kent.
Well, I was gonna, yeah, just finish that off with. I think you guys both have the 4x1 mile relay record for high school.
I broke an American record on the West Coast on a Saturday afternoon, and a Sunday morning the same weekend, Garrett and his team broke an American record as well. So the only father and son duo to break American records in the same weekend.
Holy
It's kind of
cow!
a crazy thought. Thank you, Kent.
Cool.
And thank you all for honoring me with your time. Lots you could be doing today, and you came here, so thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, fantastic.
Again, this is Brad Barton. Thank you again, Brad, for giving us your time and sharing. Love you,
It's
man.
my pleasure.
Good luck with the next record. What's it going to be?
Um, Great question. I was record fit just before I turned 55 and another surgery with my knee. And I've been close to world record fit twice more since I turned 55 and gone down in flames. So we'll see. I want the mile world record, M60. I'm almost 59 now, so let's see if I can get to a starting line this time. Thanks for asking.
There you go. Well, just keep reinventing. That's amazing. Hang in there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again. This is Brad Barton.